While every year is a new adventure, 2020 was the mark of a new decade, which is usually extra special in people's mind. No one expected it to turn out the way it did. I constantly lived life not knowing what tomorrow is going to be like. Everything from the people I meet to the jobs I have to do. What's normal for me is insane to others. But understanding how others experience life can often make you wonder, what exactly is a normal way of life? They say change is a scary but necessary process. When 2020 threw the world upside down, did I have to change as a person to adapt? Would the people around me completely change as well? How people celebrate a new year can be vastly different depending on the culture and lifestyle. For some, that means partying with large groups of people. For others, it can be a simple stroll in nature. In the Chinese calendar, this was the year of the rat. It is said to symbolize fertility and abundance. When it came to the animals this year, I guess that was definitely accurate. There seemed to be babies everywhere. Everything from ducklings to goslings. This year, they were everywhere. For some reason, this generation of offsprings became very attached to me as well. Even the parents seemed to constantly try and teach them that it was okay that I'm friendly. How would you react when a wild animal treats you like one of their buddies?
Holy cow, it's like the ultimate trust.
If anything, it showed that 2020 would introduce a lot of firsts. And boy, was that an understatement in an unexpected way.
Okay, I think life might get interesting here now. Apparently here in Vancouver, it's officially declared as a state of emergency, they said.
A state of emergency, you say? I definitely never experienced this before. People were saying this is the same type of procedure that was issued during a war. But apparently, this war was against some virus called COVID-19 that spread through droplets, such as when people talk or cough. With experts not knowing much about it, extreme shutdowns were implemented. A once busy city was closed. People were terrified to go outside, thinking that they could contract the virus even in their own backyard with no one else around. It seemed that fear had completely taken over a large portion of the population's demeanor as a result as well. Toilet paper was actually a hot commodity as people began to hoard them to the point stores couldn't keep up with demand. Even supermarkets were completely transformed in an effort to try and keep people away from each other. One-way direction signs to maintain a flow of traffic and temperature checking as a way to determine if one has flu-like symptoms. At times you wonder if this is all real. Many businesses were also forced to close down permanently due to the lack of business with people staying home. Even the animals were going crazy. Who's to blame for all this? This virus was said to have originated from China, so it was natural for people to fear anyone who traveled from the area. But sadly, I knew this was going to happen as well. People didn't care that I am a Chinese-born Canadian. If you look like me, that must mean you have the virus.
So I can have some social distancing. You asshole.
What? The hell was that?
Is this fear or racism? Because in terms of a normal way of life, it's sad to say that virus or not, I experience these kinds of situations all the time. But despite this, many people would say that there is no such thing as racism. Some things simply don't change, I suppose. In that sense, it's a normal way of life. Although, maybe I spoke too soon. In the midst of all this COVID-19 chaos, a huge incident in Minnesota occurred that would generate worldwide anger for change. A police officer was publicly recorded on video trying to restrain a suspect. He did this by pressing his knee on the suspect's throat as he pleaded with the officer that he couldn't breathe. Not believing him, the officer kept his knee to the throat as the man passed away. This was a visible minority as well, which sparked outrage that it was an act of racism and reaffirmed the fear that many black people vocalize on the marginalization and discrimination they face each day as they fear for their lives. Some argue this happens all the time. The only difference is that it was caught on camera. Despite protocols that ban gatherings in many cities, people from all over the world began to hold mass protest rallies against racism. I personally never seen anything like this, as whenever it comes to the topic, I am simply used to people telling me that racism simply doesn't exist to the point where I need to fend for myself. It wasn't without its controversies though, as there were a lot of people who seemed to be looting for personal gain or creating violence for dubious purposes. But it did force politicians and businesses to address the issue. Some say it went too far, such as banning product brands that perpetuated stereotypes, while others say not enough is being done for things like systemic racism. Whatever the case may be, it definitely changed things. Protests seemed to be the theme of the year as well. Disputes arose where many believed that mandatory lockdowns were just as harmful to society, creating an economic collapse or creating life-threatening mental illness due to people being forced into isolation. Thousands around the world protested about the issue as well. Conflict was definitely in the air this year. What else could happen?
As usual, you guys see what I see. I'm just documenting.
Speaking of air, this year we actually had the worst air quality in the world at times due to the smoke from forest fires arriving from the south. There were even massive fires locally. But despite all this, did I really have to change as a person? In some ways, it didn't feel like it at times. I still lived life one day and one step at a time. I still walked more than the entire distance of Canada for the year. I still utilized my knowledge and resources to help people whenever I could. There was that one time I helped that lady that was panicking while lost in a smoke-filled day to get her to the COVID testing site.
This way.
Where?
This way. Just keep going. Feeling sick?
No, I'm mentally ill. I had to take the glasses off. They're completely fogged up, and I'm breathing in smoke.
So, right here?
Where?
This way. Just follow me. Follow me this way.
I think I'm almost there. Right?
Yeah, you're almost there. Yeah, don't worry. I know my way around here.
Thank God I have to stop like this.
She was definitely thankful for that.
Yeah, it should be right here like that. I'm guessing over there.
Thank you so much.
No problem, no problem. Is that all good?
Thank you.
Thank you, take care. Bye.
I remember this one day where a protester was literally living in a tree to stop a pipeline. I just did what I normally did, which was to use my resources and document everything in a neutral manner.
How's it going up there? He's like, where is he? Yeah, what are you doing?
Likewise, people seemed very grateful for that. And one thing that I was constantly told was that simply creating videos like I normally did greatly helped a lot of people get through the stress of lockdowns and isolations. So in that sense, it didn't feel like I had to change as a person. The situation may have been different, but who I am as a person remained the same, I felt. Maybe it's a simple combination of doing things that you are genuinely passionate about while appreciating the simple things in life, That doesn't mean I didn't get to go through some new things this year despite travel restrictions. While traveling to places were extremely limited, one of the themes this year was figuring out how to navigate through life with the increase in demand to do everything digital and away from other people. A new computer seemed like a necessity, but I guess with the habit of trying to be as frugal and resourceful as possible, I somehow managed to still survive with my decade-old computer. Although this thing has to be replaced by next year. I actually did finally upgrade to a new smartphone. Right on time too, as so much of my work required things like video conferencing. Speaking of which, industries changing with strict COVID protocols was an interesting twist. Having to get tested for COVID on its own was definitely different, but the fact that I had to be isolated for days at home until I was needed on set seemed kind of over the top. That's just not normal for a person like me to not go outside. But despite that, I survived the whole ordeal. Almost every year, I have often upgraded one piece of gear. I guess this year, there was two, as I actually got a new drone as well. My main drone started to act up, but fortunately, I had the smaller one despite the quality being lower. Knowing that we live in an unprecedented time though, and how capturing history feels like a beneficial thing to do, it just seemed like a wise decision to get a better drone. Everyone has their part to play in the world, I guess you could say. Aside from that, this year I had to get my wisdom tooth pulled out as it was causing me pain. Fortunately, everything seemed to go well. If this was supposed to be the most painful thing of the year, I think everything is going to be okay. How will next year fare? There were a lot of things behind the scene that made me think life can change pretty fast. Maybe this year was a test to see how well I can adapt. One year I found myself losing all my gear and receiving support to keep going. And this year, it felt more like giving back. In that sense, it feels like the normal way on how life comes in full circles. It was definitely different this year, but in many ways, normal at the same time. Alright, see you guys later.